Welcome to the first episode of Under Control. I'm Paul Bartlett, and on today's show, I sit down with Tony Van Der Haar from the US Boone County Sheriff's Department. Tony joined law enforcement in 1993 and has worked in different areas such as undercover narcotics. Since 2011, he's been a detective in the unit of electronic crimes, specializing in computer and telephone forensics. On this intriguing episode, we will discuss how technology and security plays a role in supporting other police units. We'll also cover how COVID-19 changed the way law enforcement is working on a day-to-day basis. Hey, Tony, it's a pleasure having you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good to have you on the show today. I've been looking forward to this one. So I think we're going to get started with just a bit of background about yourself and about the organization that you're working for. And then we'll just go in from there. Okay?
Sure. My name's Tony Van Der Haar. I work for the Boone County Sheriff's Office in Northern Kentucky in the United States. I've been in law enforcement for about 28 years. I got hired in 1993 and got an opportunity to do a lot of different things such as undercover drug work, investigations, been promoted a couple times. And in 2011, I had the opportunity to get into electronic crimes, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, and that's where I've been ever since.
Right. Okay. And what about Boone County Sheriff Department? What kind of area are you covering and what's the community you serve?
So Boone County is about 256 square miles. We're about 10 miles from Cincinnati, Ohio. We have a lot of the Ohio River that borders and surrounds Boone County. We have about if I last remember, about 130,000 daytime or nighttime residents, and that increases dramatically with the businesses and warehouses that we have. And our department is about 150 or so sworn deputies. We're the second largest patrol sheriff's office in Kentucky.
Right. And just I'm curious to know, illustrious career in law enforcement, and you said you worked in drug enforcement. You've touched a few other departments as well. How did you get into the digital crimes unit? Was it something that you aspired for, or you just kind of fell into it? There was a need?
Yeah, so I kind of fell into it. I always kind of had an interest in tech and computers, cell phones, that kind of a thing. But where my office sat, when I was a lieutenant in investigations, my office sat between the two digital forensics guys. And we shared the same hallway. So interacting with them on a day-to-day basis and seeing what they were doing, I was spending more time in their office. Hey, what does this do? What does that mean? Why are you doing it this way? And so luckily, I made a proposal to the sheriff. Hey, I'd like to get into this. I think they could use a third person, and he agreed. So that's how I started my career in electronics.
Fantastic, yeah. And so, what's the department made up of then? Is it just yourself, and you got a few detectives working in there, or are you quite a large department?
Well, in the investigations whole, we have about 20 different detectives that are assigned. Some are assigned to different task force. In the general investigations, where I work at, we have about 15. And then electronic crimes, right now it's myself and another person, Lieutenant Bill Samad. There is room for a third person, and that third person, he just retired. So we're waiting for the new guy to be able to transition from patrol to get in here to get his feet wet and get him running. So electronic crimes, we have 3 people in it.
Okay. And just to be clear for the listeners, what's the electronic crime? I mean, it might sound the obvious question, but maybe a little bit of detail about what that is. And is it just around technology and data, or does it cover anything else as well?
Well, we're really a support wing. That's kind of what we transition to. We don't do a lot of investigations on our own. But anything that has data to it, whether it's a watch, a cell phone, computer, what have you, then we're going to try to extract that data, make sense of that data, and put it out into an easy to digest format for the detectives. And then, of course, anything else that pops up, tech questions, subpoenas, search warrants, interviews, we'll assist in that also.
Right, I see. So you're supporting the guys out there in the field, and then hopefully, that if there's data lying around. And are you seeing more of that now because there's devices lying around everywhere? And
Oh
People have got
yeah.
mobile devices, they got iPads, they got all sorts of stuff. Do you see what everybody else is seeing in the industry, that everything's starting to move online, everything's starting to go digital?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it used to be when I started, there was a select type of cases that we were really involved in.
Right.
And mainly that being like child pornography, that kind of a
Yeah.
thing. But nowadays, no matter what type of crime it is, a theft, burglary, drugs, murder, rape, child sexual abuse, you name it.
Yeah.
We're involved into it because what's the one thing that everybody has is a cell phone primarily. And man, you can really know somebody's life by going through their cell phone, know, so.
Yeah. I mean, as much as we're advocates of data privacy, of course, there's a place for that, and I understand that those that break the law, this is the place to be able to prove evidence and collect evidence significantly. And to that point, I mean, have you seen over your time? I mean, you started out, you say, 20 years ago, and the way that collecting evidence and using technology has evolved as well. I mean, have you kind of always been at the forefront of technology, or would you say that you've kind of been lagging behind and companies or vendors have come in and always continuously offering you different ways to work or suggesting different ways to work?
Yeah, I won't say that we're at the forefront, but I'm not going to say we're 10 years behind the times either.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with cost. We're in definitely a better shape than a lot of agencies in Kentucky. But also too, we kind of wait to let some of the technology kind of get vetted out, so to speak.
Right.
Before we jump on board and say, hey, we're going to be all in on something.
Yeah. And what about when you're faced with a plethora of technologies, because it's all out there, right? And how do you typically go through identifying potentially what's the right technology for you to move forward with, or you'd like to explore it more? I mean, is that down to you? Do you bring a consortium of people together? I mean, we know that these processes can be, quite political at times, but yeah, what does it look like for you when you're looking for new technology?
It's really a team effort, a group effort. It doesn't, the ideas or suggestions don't come from one person. Obviously, there's some people that are more in tune to emerging technology and advancements, so we're lucky there. But even somebody that's really not super tech savvy, that's in investigations or on the cutting edge, so to speak, might have heard something, might have seen something, and then through them bringing it up or questioning, hey, what about this? That will get the ball rolling and the spark going.
And I suppose yourself, you're always on the lookout and looking at ways to be able to improve within the budget or the constraints that you have, but certainly looking to implement technology to benefit the organization.
Try to be,
right?
Anyway.
Yeah. And to that point, I mean, you mentioned with the detectives, and I'm always curious about this, and I think we've had a conversation about this before, is about adoption of technology, right? So it's okay having the technology available, but a lot of organizations, not just law enforcement, but across the board, are always, it's another technology. It's right. What are we got to do here? Are we going to use it effectively? Does that create always some nervousness around when you find something and you want to bring it in, whether it's going to be, you're going to be able to justify bringing it in because everybody wants to use it?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, we've had adopted some pieces of tech, and it's fallen flat on its face,
right.
For various reasons. Either it was too complicated, the guys just weren't buying into it, whatever it is. But then we've had some where it's like, okay, yeah, we can see this, we're going to make an effort. We try to keep it as simple as possible. And myself and another colleague of mine that's in the crime scene unit, he's very tech savvy, cutting edge kind of a thing. And, we always get into a debate back and forth of, look, this is the right thing to do. We need to do this. And then the counterpoint would be, look, the guys are not going to buy into it. It's way too complicated, or, they're just not there yet, ready to adopt that philosophy. So it's always that push and pull of always trying to do the right thing, always trying to be on top of something, but then making sure you're bringing the people behind you, So
Yeah, and I suppose it's really important to get those, the buy-in from everybody when you want to introduce a new technology. There will be those that will be early adopters, and then there'll be those that are kind of lagging behind and refuse to change. Because I suppose as well, with any technology, there's a process behind it as well, right? So it means a process change potentially as well.
yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I just wanted to sort of touch on as well that, we've spoken in the past about particular use case you've got for our service, but I think that's really important as well, that you were saying that the way that you were moving data in the past wasn't efficient enough. Would you touch on that topic for me a little bit about, if possible, about the risks involved or the risks that you saw and why you needed to change?
Yeah, and I'm sure like a lot of other places, we'd have guys, in the department would buy external hard drives
Mm.
of various sizes, thumb drives, but they get lost, misplaced.
Yeah.
You lend it out to somebody and they never come back. Do you have one that's big enough? And besides having this data storage capability, there's the risk that comes with, okay, is it encrypted? Are we handling the information securely in the proper way to do it? And of course, a lot of times, honestly, the answer was, yeah, no, it wasn't. Yes, we were handing it directly to somebody, but if they would have lost it, what have you. And so part of bringing people along, after a while, when Electronic Crimes Unit that I'm part of would just say, look, I don't have any more external hard drives to give you. I don't have any more thumb drives to give you. Then those, it affected the detectives, right?
Right.
So even they saw that, okay, now this is becoming my problem. So what are we going to do? So that's when we started looking at, encrypted cloud storage, moving data a lot more efficiently and more securely. And so that helped those people, come on board saying, okay, yeah, this is something new, but, we're tired of doing it the old way. So we're ready to try something different. So
yeah, and I think you particularly highlighted one case. You're using actually a resource from the force when you need to share sensitive information with other law enforcement agencies, right? So I think there was a case where you have to drive it across the river, which I was fascinated by, but that's what it is, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh, exactly. And we would run in those cases all the time. A case would start here, and we'd have information that then would lead to literally the state of California,
Right.
across the country. Well, how are we going to get that data to them? And in the past, it would be, all right, we're going to drop it certified mail. We're going to put, tape on it, property tape, and then, that kind of a thing. But really, is that the best way of doing things? And the answer is no. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think this is just bringing everybody up to speed with that. And once they see the benefits of that, and releasing potentially an officer, which you said we're driving across the border into the next state just to hand over a drive, which is a vehicle, which is a hard disk with the potential of it getting lost or broken or anything else. Takes that away, right? So that's a saving in the end. So I remember that story well, and I just thought I'd bring it up here because it was absolutely fascinating for me.
Yeah.
Also, from your time in law enforcement, where you've mentioned a couple of the pitfalls of not adopting technology, but where have you seen it benefit? Where has it kind of made a complete step change to you? Is it something where you've moved to cloud because you can collaborate a lot better with other law enforcement agencies or with the attorney's office? Or what have there been significant changes that you've seen by introducing technology?
A recent event that also in part led us to go into encrypted cloud storage, such as Treasure It. We had a murder case. The guy had been convicted. He got a retrial. He won a retrial, in part based on what the defense was saying, that they did not receive all of the evidence, particularly the data part of the evidence, not just the forensic side of it, but video surveillance reports, that kind of a thing. They did not properly receive that. And the way it works is we turn over all of our stuff and discovery to the Commonwealth Attorney, the prosecutor, and then the prosecutor then in turn gives all that stuff to the defense. So during the retrial hearing, I sat in on that, was part of that. And after listening to the testimony, I thought, something, this was never a problem before, obviously. we did everything correctly. There was paper documentation, but the question came down to exactly, yes, we got a 1 terabyte hard drive. Yes, it had video surveillance on it. Yes, it had some reports on it, but what exactly did it have on it? So because of that, we got a hashing program that would hash out every single file in there, and then would run that as a test so that you could see if something didn't copy correctly, if something got corrupted, if something got changed. But then also with the cloud part of it, now when I give this to the Commonwealth Attorney, I have documentation that on this date and time, from this IP address, they received it, they downloaded it, and I can keep that now, that receipt, and say, yeah, no, you got everything. And also, with the ability to, you only get this many downloads and it's only good for this part of time, then that's where the security aspect comes in on it too.
Yeah. Yeah, and to that point, Tony, I think I've been talking to other customers as well about the digital audit trail, and it's good to hear that that's something that's invaluable to you, because I think it is more and more important going forward as we move into that digital world. And typically, we might have had a filing cabinet, we've got a document out, you might have to sign a book to say that you checked this record, that record. Now it's a lot more easier, right? So it's like you can,
yeah, absolutely. And it kind of branched off of that a little bit, and we discussed part of the thing that is a side benefit, when we were looking like at Treasure It and stuff, specifically, besides all the stuff we just talked about, the ability of the guys to have an app on their phone, because, you have a major case, right? And you can have, the whole investigative unit working on a murder case or what have you. And so you got 10, 15 different people going out on their own, getting each of their little puzzle piece of that case, right? So how are we going to collaborate out in the field securely? So for them to be able to go out and use Treasure It's app to take a secure picture of a phone, bypassing, that picture potentially going into private cloud storage, but going into a secure folder that the case agent, the lead case detective set up, and to drop and drag all that stuff in there. And then that way too, if you need to get somebody's information, their picture, their date of birth, what have you, there's no more calling, there's no more texting, hey, what about this, what about that? They can go right into that folder, look at all the information that they need. And it makes it so much more secure, makes it so much more efficient. And really that was a side benefit, a very pleasant side benefit we never even thought of when we're doing something like that. So that's a huge benefit.
Yeah, and the same with, I think, with public services, or in law enforcement, you get audited like everybody else, right? So there are times when you have to produce audit trails, or they get requested, and I think this is, despite from obviously our technology as well, I think technology in general can provide those timestamps more clearly when information was transferred, documented properly as well, who accessed it, different activity walls. It really is something that I'm keen to see people using technology to that benefit. So moving on to the present day now, and looking back and seeing all of those benefits for technology, where are you now with the COVID situation? Because, I mean, it's caused disruption for everybody, so I'm sure that it must have caused some disruption for you. But as in law enforcement, is it service as normal, or is there concessions that you've had to make?
No, it's definitely not normal. On the patrol side, they were affected on how they were handling calls. Obviously, a lot more stuff was being taken care of over the telephone if possible. Everything was being taken care of outside the house, speaking to people when possible. Minor changes such as that. From an investigative standpoint, back in March, the sheriff sent everybody home. Everybody works from home till I have a handle on what's going on.
Right.
And so, of course, like a lot of places, that left us scrambling. Okay. Yeah. So how we go to work cases, when you're used to being together, exchanging information, having easy access to data. So that left our IT department for the county and us. All right. Proper VPN, making sure that the laptops are encrypted properly. So, if something were to happen to it. And then from an electronic crime standpoint, all right, how are we going to handle the images and the data properly? Or we need to make sure that they're secured when we're at the house. And so there was a lot. We were left scrambling, obviously, with handling things securely and properly. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's just not a case of, okay, you've got the technology available. It's about the process as well, right? It's also, are we compliant? Are we also meeting regulation guidelines, working remotely? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And also, the personal side of it, from being at home. Okay, guys, look, you need to make sure that your antivirus is up to date. You got proper malware, not only on the laptop, the work issued laptop, but at your home. Make sure that everything's secured and locked down. So, people needed to take an extra step, from their personal lives also to make sure that, their work life wasn't going to be impacted negatively. On that aspect of it.
Yeah. Also, myself working remotely as well, we went through again, a load of changes in process, and that took some time to get used to, and the way that we log in, personal devices as well. So it was certainly also from our side, challenging, very much like what you guys went through. But I think it's just interesting because you assume that, well, maybe law enforcement carries on the same way as it always did, but no, you were also in the same boat as everyone else. You had to make those adjustments. So that was good. And what's the situation now? I mean, is it still that you're all working remotely, or are you kind of implementing new ways of working, about getting back to the office and getting back together as a team? How's that working out?
Yeah, well, right now, everybody's been brought back to the office and investigations. Obviously we're waiting to see what happens with the spikes and everything. But right now, it's kind of, business as normal, so to speak, in investigations. And the patrol still obviously tries to do what they can to stay safe and have distance with people as best as they can. But no, right now we're kind of back to the 9 to 5, so to speak.
Right. And how about the attorney's office and the court? Are you back to normal? Are they back to normal, or are they also working with some kind of video technology as well?
Yeah, no, they're not back to normal.
Right.
And in fact, we have several big cases that have been postponed again because of different case law. That once a case gets started,
right.
If some of the jurors do get infected by COVID, that puts a wrench in it, and double jeopardy comes into play. A lot of things. So right now, there's been some on the federal side of some cases I've heard. Been some minor hearings, I think, going on, but on the state side, pretty much all the cases, like I said, have been postponed for quite a while.
Yeah, and I'm going into the future now. I mean, what do you see for the future for law enforcement around technology as well? Are you more or less content with what you've got? Are you lacking somewhere? What do you see for the future? What can make things with life a little bit easier for you? Of course, COVID's come along and that's changed things, but has it brought digital transformation early for you, or what's the situation?
Yeah, well, with COVID, I'd heard a person say that it hasn't. What the pandemic has done is accelerated everything.
Yeah.
So things that were coming, and I can tell you, with my wife working for the federal government, there was talk that in 5 years, you'll get a laptop, maybe you can work from home. Well, that 5 years is now today. And the same thing for us. I mean, obviously, it's accelerated ideas that we've had, about possibly working from home from time to time if something were to happen. That kind of jump started us in that area too, looking at that for possible future situations. You never really know. I guess, from my opinion, like what your imagination can bring with technology. We just kind of keep our eyes open and see where we can benefit from it, where we can.
And as a law enforcement, of course, you get together and you share ideas from different states. I don't know, in the past, you've been in several conferences and things like that. And of course, that whole conference scene is not there anymore. So how are you guys going to be? Are you going to be online sharing that information? Is it just on hold for the time being? How do you collaborate with the other forces?
Yeah, so a lot of it has been pushed online to virtual classes, so to speak, and it's better than nothing. Obviously, you miss that human interaction, that just happens with ideas and sharing ideas. But there's been a lot of the online transitioning that's been going on. So, and again, you take what you can get. Yeah. So we'll right for right now. I mean, that's how we're going to get our training. That's how we're going to still collaborate with people. That we have messaging apps, that kind of a thing, that we stay in touch with one another trying to exchange ideas. Have you seen this? Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
But it's not the same.
Mm-hmm. And what about from a regulation perspective? I mean, do you see anything, I mean, you're regulated as much as anybody else. Do you see anything changing in that perspective? I mean, typically, probably law enforcement, as much as they embrace technology, there's a lot of red tape to go through, okay? But I assume now maybe there's an opportunity to cut away some of that red tape and speed things up from what you actually need.
You know, we're very cautious when we're doing anything like that. I don't know how much red tape is actually going to be cut or we're cutting now. So I don't think it's going to speed things up for us, so to speak, in that regard. I mean, it will accelerate some things, but we're always still going to be making sure we cross the T's, dot the I's.
Yeah.
Because we always want to get it right, and especially in today's climate, where we need to be scrutinized, we need to be watched. There needs to be documentation of things. You don't want to cut corners for the sake of speed and efficiency, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I'm just a little bit conscious of time here, and I know we've talked about the future of tech, but what it means for law enforcement. What is it that I've just got one other question? What is it that you've seen really change tech? Because of all the time that you've been in law enforcement, what was the thing that really changed it? Was it the introduction of mobile devices because detectives worked remotely? What is it, the big thing that really created a mega shift for law enforcement?
I honestly have to say encryption.
Right.
And there's obviously a bill being introduced in the United States about allowing backdoors, so to speak, in encryption. And when you come across cell phones, the encryption and what is that balance of, being private and secure versus, the public's need to know, so to speak, law enforcement, the government's need to know. So I'd say encryption is really the big thing. That we discuss here on that aspect of it.
Yeah, because I suppose it's slightly a double-edged sword for law enforcement when you need that encryption because of the sensitive information that you collect, and of course there are bad actors out there. But what about when you need access? You need to get access to someone's device and it's encrypted. So those are always, I think, a continuous topic of discussion. As you mentioned, there are certain bills raised in the US around that. Okay, listen, Tony, I know it's been short and sweet, but we've covered a lot, and I've really interested, and I'm really happy that we've had this discussion. It's been insightful. Thanks a lot for your time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Well, hopefully it was beneficial to you.
It was fantastic. It was great. And that's it for today's episode of Under Control. You can find links to all of our social platforms and to our guests in the episode description. If you like the show, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. Join us in 2 weeks' time for the next episode.